Hi, I'm Christian and I am from a design company called Turner Duckworth. Tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the way we work and some of the observations we've made about the way that design is at the moment and the way that it's changing. Can you hear me okay? Sorry. So, we are we specialise in consumer visual identities, and we are a company of 100 people split between 3 studios. We started in London and San Francisco at the same time, and we've recently opened a New York studio. We're a really close company, so we collaborate all the time, but there's a kind of underlying kind of competition. So we share work and we learn from each other, and we develop work kind of across the studios, but there's this kind of underlying competition that drives our work on, and we think improves the work. So a bit about me, just quickly. I started at Turner Duckworth in 2000, and then I worked there for a few years, and then I decided that I think I could do a better job of it myself. So I left in 2008, but I couldn't do a good job, so I ended up coming back. So I've been back for 4 years, now creative director. So unmistakable design for the world's most famous brands is what we do, is how we talk about ourselves at the moment. This is just a snapshot of some of the brands that we're working with at the moment or have worked with recently. Probably most recent is HSBC. We did the global rebrand of that. So some kind of high-profile clients. Why unmistakable? It's the way we describe the approach that we take. And I think I'm just going to talk a little bit about why that's so important for brands today, and how we get there and what we do to make brands unmistakable. So, firstly, being unmistakable cuts through. Secondly, it makes memories. And thirdly, it brings brands to mind. I mean, a good indication of this is, I think, when you think about being unmistakable, it's a key to being famous. And just the sort of merest glimpse of some, famous people that are unmistakable will just bring them to mind immediately. So you just have to see a small kind of glimpse of them, and you know that person. And the same is true for brands. Here's just a couple of examples. I think that you'll all recognise all of those brands, and it's just the smallest glimpse of those that brings the brand to mind. And it's that power of unmistakable assets of a brand that are really valuable to brands these days. And I think that is even more important than it ever has been with the world that we live in. It's a world of visual distractions and chaos. And I think that now that we're all kind of using screen, I think it makes it more important that a brand needs to have these really strong visual assets that really bring a brand to mind in a kind of really short time frame, and a really kind of when you just haven't got the attention. Oh no. I refer to number 4. Oh no. Sorry about this distraction. Okay, so I think all of this gives a new criteria to judge design by. I think it's what we like to call it the screen age. This idea that we're constantly using screens and interacting with brands on screens, and I think that shift to screens has brought a fundamental change to design. It's a shift towards the social. Brands aren't just selling anymore. They have to try a lot harder and be a lot more creative to attract new consumers and to retain their attention. So brands have to be photogenic. It's not good enough to just to sell anymore or just kind of communicate product uniqueness. It has to be really photogenic. It has to be likable. And in an ideal world, it needs to be shareable so that you gain advocates of the brand and fans of the brand. A really useful thing for us as designers is the fact that you can't skip design. It's something you have to buy. It's something with packaging you have to purchase it. So there's an engagement that you have to make. So I think this is an opportunity for us as designers to make something that's really desirable. I'm just going to go through a few observations of things that are happening with brands at the moment and design for brands. this is a project we worked on for one of our clients, Burger King, last year, or the year before last. It's their holiday packaging for their burgers, for their products. And the idea is this kind of visual connection of flame grilled, which is one of their product truths, and then the kind of Santa Claus beard. So it's a really nice visual link. But the way it's applied to the bag kind of creates this sort of engagement for customers. So it makes it really engaging. And that plays out on social media, really. It's a kind of an opportunity for the brands to really make a connection with consumers and engage them in a, and it's a kind of a pull approach to communication. So there's really that emphasis on really strong creativity across brands. The other thing is that brands are really investing in the unmissable core. So things that brands need to have, so packaging, for example, this is another job that we worked on for Miller Lite. It was for Independence Day. And it's a simple thing. Packaging is a requirement of a brand, but just using it in an interesting way. So this was the multi-pack, and it was designed in such a way that you could tessellate it and create the stars and stripes, and it could be kind of created at different formats. So it really brings a sense of indoor, like in-store theatre, in a really cost-effective and simple way. That's a real kind of almost like a new way of creating design and engagement with consumers. And as I said, there's this real sort of belief in the power of the unmistakable, and that can be anything from symbols, colours, patterns, textures, and physical items that are associated with brands. So whether it's the Subway, the new Subway symbol, just the Coca-Cola assets, the iconic bottle and the colour red, that combination. And you don't need the brand name. If they're kind of strong enough assets, they'll bring the brand to mind really immediately for consumers. On the right-hand side is something we're working with Mcdonald's with at the moment for their global visual identity. So it's just about using the product, and really celebrating the kind of distinctness of the product, and the cheese, and then the sesame seeds on the bun. Just kind of trying to use them in, so these are merchandise items. The other thing is about this there's a kind of an explosion of social and cultural activity with brands. So we worked with Y&R in New Zealand on this project for Burger King again. And it was an idea conceived by the ad agency for like a kind of a truce to the burger wars. It was an opportunity to kind of engage with McDonald's in the kind of public space. So Burger King published an open letter in the New York Times suggesting that McDonald's kind of come together and create a McWhopper for one day to sort of celebrate Peace Day. As it turns out, McDonald's didn't rise to it, so which was actually brilliant for Burger King, because it kind of gave them the upper hand, and they looked like the good guys among the two. So we helped them with the sort of simple branding, this kind of crashing together of the two brands. Again, I think it just sort of talks about the unmistakable nature of the brands that we were working with. So just to kind of recap on those sort of aspects, what's kind of happening with design? There's that real emphasis on creativity, investment of the unmissable core, so things that the brands need to produce and are produced on a daily basis, not extra things, just like packaging, things that interiors that brands need to produce. And then this belief in the power of the unmistakable, the assets, the colours, the typography, all the things that you can link back to the brand visually. And then there's this explosion of social and cultural activity, this sort of idea that brands are trying new things and engaging in new ways with their consumers. So all of that combination of all those aspects really bring a sort of new attention to brands, which is great. But with our work, what we've noticed is we're obviously creating unmistakable assets that stand the test of time. They're enduring. They're supposed to be around forever, really, essentially. We're crafting those, but then there's a tension between creating these kind of things that have longevity, and then this need for creativity and diversity within the activations and the communications with clients, consumers, sorry. So there's a real tension there. How do you create something that's long-lasting and something that's exciting and new? So the way we work is it's sort of two processes that work in parallel. There's a process of discipline about reducing and simplifying and making things iconic and unmistakable. And then I'll talk about the second one after. But the process we like to take is, well, this is a metaphor for it really, but this idea that if you can reduce things down to a really simple handful of assets, you give people the opportunity to be more creative. You know, if you think of going into a stationery store, like an art supply shop, there's like a world of opportunity of like what you can do with all this stuff, but actually it's kind of overwhelming. And we like to think of our approach as more like this. It's like, actually, if you just got a pen and a pad, that kind of canvas, it just pushes you to be more creative because you have to think of great ideas, really. And you can be overwhelmed by too much choice. So it's all really about sort of stripping things back and simplifying. This is the visual identity we created for Levi's. So when we start, we kind of take the assets that are there and sort of simplify, do an audit of all of the assets and work out what are the most kind of potent, the most memorable assets of a brand, and strip them back. And actually, you can remove the logo type from the identity, from the batwing, the famous batwing, and it's still clear that it's the Levi's brand. So it's as simple as it can possibly be. You know, there's nothing more you can take away from that mark without it being kind of indistinguishable. So it's like a really unmistakable logo. Then there's the kind of really crafting. If there's something that within the brand that you need to craft, there's a real sense of like, how can we bring the craft to this and make it a kind of an asset and something really valuable to the brand. So this is a redrawn version of their famous 2-horse pull, which talks about the quality of the product. Obviously, we have a version of the logo that has the marker with the logo type within it, but you can see they are the core building blocks of the brand that we've created, and a simple color palette. So once we've got that, it's a really refined, simple set of assets that can be repeated. And we do this with we find that it works with all of our clients. It doesn't matter who they are when we really limit it. So these are the kind of the core assets of the brand that are unified across all markets. So once we've got that, we need to then bring it to life to just make sure that it has got the flex that we can create interesting, exciting worlds around it. And we run this in parallel. So we don't just create these and then move on to the next part. It's really about creating these and seeing that they'll work in a wider visual world. So then we test things. So these two processes work in parallel, and we really like creating the assets, refining them, and then testing them, like experimenting with them, applying them to different touch points and different activations, really to see if these kind of handful of assets are really going to work. So this is the visual identity for Burger King that we created a couple of years ago. So as I said, there's this kind of real sense of we work with the assets, we refine them, simplify, and really limit them to that handful of the unmistakable assets. And then at the same time, just test them to see if they really are going to give us the potential to kind of create a really exciting, engaging world. I think this is the visual identity we created for Coca-Cola about 6 years ago. And I think it was when we really unlocked this system. Before we started work with Coca-Cola, there was a kind of a whole world of assets and different bottle visuals and cans with bubbles on and ice and everything you can imagine. It was just so complicated and was being sort of threatened by own label and things like that. And it was a real kind of complicated mess of a world. So once we would stripped it down to those core handful of assets and then built this whole world, I think it was a kind of like unlocking a new process for us, and it just made so much sense. And that we've taken that process with every brand that we've worked with since, and it's just works brilliantly for us. And we call that Love the Unmistakable, which is our kind of mantra, really. It's about taking the weird, quirky things, just to go back. I mean, when we were first working with Coca-Cola, there was this need to kind of put ice on the pack and visuals with bubbles, and everyone knows Coke is a cold soft drink. But there's this kind of weird contradiction that it's a red can, so it breaks all of those codes. But actually, when you strip it back, it's an unmistakable brand, and everyone knows it. And you just need to strip it back to those core, the essence of the brand. So I think this is sort of capturing the essence of the way that we've been working and things that we see as being kind of great practice. We're working with Samsung at the moment. They're probably one of our biggest clients. And we've been working with them for about 4 years. And when they came to us, there was this kind of mess, again, a mess of logos and sub-brand logos. And every time a new product launched, there was kind of new materials and new branding assets created. So again, we used our process and just stripped that back. Actually, it's probably the most simplest set of assets that we've done for a brand. It was really just kind of stripping it back, black or white logo type, a simple typeface that they already owned, and then a limited color palette of black, white, and the Samsung blue. And it's really about like stripping that back and then just saying, okay, this is your really limited palette. If you stick to these, you'll really reinforce the brand and put the attention back on Samsung itself and not the kind of myriad of products that they launch. So as I said, you kind of, from that, you can then have a really rich visual world, which is all linked together with those core assets, but it gives you the opportunity to try new things that feel linked and connected. So this is some of the work that we just launched last week for the new Fold, Galaxy Fold and Galaxy S10. And there's like illustration styles that are based on the kind of the assets and just that limited color palette. As I said, when we test these assets, when we're working on them, we really make sure that they have got the legs and the possibility to create a rich visual world. And they're only assets if people can use them. So obviously when we create them, they go out to ad agencies and communication marketing agencies to build the world that we don't get involved in. And this just shows, this was an exhibition for 100 years of Coca-Cola, and 100 designers and artists and illustrators were commissioned to create a poster each to celebrate 100 years. And it just shows the kind of creativity that can come out of such a small set of assets. The other thing that we believe in, when we're working on a project, we'll set the designers the brief. And sometimes it's the smallest thing that will just unlock the kind of creativity in a project. So something simple like an open and close sign for a shop, and it's just like those little kind of bits of wit, those little sort of gems that really suddenly unlock the kind of the feel of the brand. And so sometimes it's the smallest thing. It's not the big exciting thing like packaging or like advertising or big piece of communication. It can be a really small thing that just brings the brand to life. As I said, it's that unmistakable. It's celebrating those weird things like the 2-horse pull from Levi's or the hideous Burger King crown. It's like if you just celebrate that and just embrace it and just create something really fun. So this is the Halloween promotional Burger King crown. So it's really about sort of just celebrating the quirks and not trying to kind of make everything feel like normal and conventional like everything else. And then just remembering that we're not really a digital agency, but all of our work we consider for the digital world. So whether it's like a fav icon or an app icon that's just maybe like a few pixels across, you just immediately recognise the brand. When we designed the Amazon logo in 1999, I think it was, we created this really iconic little smile that's now on every box that you get delivered. It's just like such an iconic thing. Again, just that idea of creating a box, a cardboard box that's got a smile on it that gets delivered to your doors. It seems like sort of such an insignificant part of the brand, but it has so much power. And then finally, just the way that brands have to be Instagrammable now. So it's this idea that you've got to create stuff that's shareable and that use the brands to pull consumers in rather than kind of push to them and like sell to them. So it's just a kind of an overview of some things we found for our Burger King work. Okay, so just to recap, don't want to bore you, but just really about that idea of a fewer set of really concise, potent set of assets that is really strong and really memorable and brings the brand to mind immediately, even if it's like a glimpse of it. And about this idea of making sure those assets are usable and give potential, like get people excited and make them, inspire them to create interesting new things for the brand. And then the little things, making sure the little things, you know, taking those as an opportunity and embracing them. They're not the kind of boring jobs, they actually can be the great things of a brand. And again, obviously love the unmistakable, however ugly, illogical or unpopular those might be. And then to finish, the idea that, you know, the screen is really the acid test. If people are really occupied and preoccupied, you know, they can see that, they recognize it, or it works at a small size and they want to share it and like it. Okay, thanks very much.